that Jim Harbaugh is likely facing a 4-game suspension. All right, this was being reported all throughout the news. Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh boy, dude, I've been digging into this a little bit today. You know, obviously we watch other shows as well, but what the hell's the NCAA doing? I guess my biggest thing here, you know, we'll break this down here real quick, but what are they doing, man? I know it's because he lied. That's where the NCAA's wanted to step in, Christian, and you know, I think it's like a level 1 infraction or something like that. But it's ridiculous over buying. I actually, what I did read, I don't know if you know this, and I can't say this is 100% true, but I've seen a lot of sources leak this, and people was that he covered up a tip on a bill for some committed recruits that had drove like 500 miles for an unofficial visit. I mean, if that's the case, dude, the NCAA, I mean, I just don't understand. I guess it's more like they put no cap on this NIL thing. Players are getting paid millions of dollars. Basically, some of these guys are college athletes, all this stuff. But you're gonna penalize a coach for 4 games because he bought somebody a cheeseburger. I just don't know what's going on, man. I mean, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this as well, Christian. We haven't talked about this, so.
Man, this is what's so crazy about all this, Chris, is nothing's final yet, right? So this is all just being prematurely reported, but you know, it's being reported that Harbaugh originally was going to be suspended 6 games, but they are negotiating it down to 4. So this is part of a plea deal if he would accept this, right? Basically, the NCAA, they're pissed off that he lied to them and tried to cover up the investigation, right? And they basically want him to admit it and sign off on the fact that he lied. Harbaugh doesn't want to do that, right? He's stating that he just doesn't remember exactly all the details, allegedly. Right? This is all allegedly.
Yep.
Chris, I can tell you right now, 10 out of 10% of 10 out of every 10 times I've done something wrong in my life, I can probably tell you the details, especially something as significant as this. When you go in front of these committees, you have to think back on it. You know the rules. It's very black and white. That's the one part of it that I look at and I say, okay, I'm not cool with, right?
Right. No, I agree.
This is where I'm going with this, Chris. So we talked about that, right? And kind of like you said, it's also alleged that that's part of it. He bought someone a cheeseburger, right, and covered up the tip for it. But it's also part of this too has to deal kind of with a text message, if I'm not mistaken, between staff members outside of the allowed contact period window. Right? So to me, Chris, I look at this, I say, maybe this is why he was trying really hard to get to the NFL these last 2 years.
That's a good point. Very good point, Christian. I mean, not to interrupt you, but I've talked about that several times, haven't I? Or the NFL kind of said F you.
Yeah.
We all know he's been looking the last 2 years. Let's be honest.
Chris, this brings up a really good point, though. In this new age where college athletes are making 6 figures plus, should we really be worried about a cheeseburger and a text? Exactly. I mean, should he really be suspended for 4 games for this? I mean, if this was 10 years ago and this was Jim Tressel at Ohio State over some tattoo, money.
Yep.
He'd have been fired, dude.
Yeah. No, I know. That's what I'm getting at. It's like with the way, today's college athletes, I mean, not just football players, athletes, the money that's being thrown around, all this stuff that the NCAA has no control over, it seems like, and or don't care. And we're worried about this. I don't know what the hell they're doing. The NCAA is dead to me, man, honestly. Like, and it's been trending that way for a long time now. It's amazing to me. And I mean, we've seen the backlash over this, and I agree. He should have lied about it. I'm not saying that's correct on what Jim did, but you make a good point there, Christian. It does leave it up for debate. Maybe that's why he was, because wasn't this a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken, when this happened, or did they have a date on it? I guess I'd missed that.
No, I think it was over 2019, 2020, if I remember reading the dates right there. So,
okay.
Yeah. It was a little bit ago. For sure that this happened. This was a couple years ago. To me, I don't think this is going to impact, and a lot of people are saying this, the cover-up's worse than the crime. And that's exactly it. We did not have, it didn't have to get to this point, right? So, but here's the thing, Chris. I don't think this impacts really anything in the short term. as far as what they would have done. I think in the long term, though, this might have some consequences for Michigan. Let me explain. Their first 4 games are against Eastern Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green, and Rutgers. Pretty sure I could put you or me in as the coach there, and we could still win those games against those teams on talent disparity alone. Where I think this gets really interesting, Chris, their first game back, the first game Harbaugh comes back, is going to be against Nebraska.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and say Nebraska's going to beat them. I'm just saying Nebraska might prove to be a very interesting game with all those storylines kind of circulating there, right?
So here, I want to know this. I mean, this is what I think some of the chat, we got a few Nebraska guys in there, but
yeah.
What does that, I guess in your perspective, Christian, I wanted to ask you this question specifically. Does that make that game closer because of this going on, his first game back? Daniel makes a great point there. Exactly. I mean, does that make this game closer in your eyes, Christian, now that if Jim is suspended allegedly for these 4 games, if that does come down, his first game, I think this game is at Michigan, if I'm not mistaken, for Nebraska. Do you think that gives us a little bit of an edge?
I mean, I do, just because it's a distraction.
Right.
Okay. Right. I mean, it's enough of a distraction to where it might impact you. You know, this isn't the NFL where, you know, you can afford to go out and lose 1 or 2 games a year. You know, I mean, that's, you know, right. And even still, you can still make it to the playoffs and anything can happen. But I do think that this might be just enough of a distraction to where it could make some difference. Here's the thing, or it could go the other way, Chris. It could go the other way because from what I've read, what I've been told, Harbaugh will still be allowed to kind of be at all the practices. He's just not going to be anywhere allowed near the team for those days, right? So he'll be at the practices. He'll probably still have them going, and then he might just skip right on ahead to. Well, I don't think he's going to skip ahead. You know what I mean? You can't really do that if he's going to be doing all the rest of practices. He's going to probably take it 1 game at a time, but he might, if he's smart, start peeking ahead to Nebraska just a little bit because I know what a lot of people are going to say. This is not going to be the same Nebraska team that you see year in and year out. Matter of fact, last time, even with Scott Frost as the head coach, Nebraska and Michigan played, if I'm not mistaken. It was a close game, was it not?
Oh, yeah. No, we've actually played them really tough the last couple of times we have played them. It's just, I agree with you. I think it's more the distraction side of it. Maybe gives Nebraska. Now, when I say edge, guys, I don't mean Nebraska's going to be favored in that game or anything like that. I mean, maybe give us, you know, obviously I'm a huge Nebraska homer, probably the biggest one on the internet. I think that gives us maybe a little bit of a chance just to play better than what we would, or Michigan maybe doesn't play up to their rating and their ranking. Like I said, I am ultra high on Michigan this year anyway. But it is very interesting to kind of see the next couple of days, like what comes out here, what kind of all happens. You made a great point though, Christian, like I said earlier, man, it kind of makes you gotta wonder, like, was that part of the reason, or maybe some of the reason he was maybe trying to get out of Michigan? I think people kind of forgot about that this offseason. He was trying to go to the NFL, guys. I follow a ton of NFL, and he was putting in for jobs. And the NFL gave him a middle finger. So I don't know if maybe it was because of that. Maybe he figured he's beaten Ohio State the past couple of years, got that monkey off his back, and, you know, he wants to move back into the NFL where he was actually pretty successful with the 49ers. So.
Yeah, Chris, I mean, you're not wrong. I'll say this to kind of wrap it up on this. Daniel makes a good point. He thinks that Nebraska could pull an upset if the distractions gets to Harbaugh mentally. I agree. And the reason why I say this, every year weird shit happens in college football. You know, like last year we look back at the Georgia-Ohio State game. Now, this had nothing to do with coaches or anything like that. Actually, this is a very good point where you look at it. Their wide receiver, Jackson Smith-Njigba, right? Mm-hmm. He sat out that game. A lot of people would probably make the argument if he played in that game, Marvin Harrison got hurt, they might have probably beat Georgia.
Right.
So it's these little, small, incremental things that add up on you. You know, now they're not a young team by any stretch of the imagination. Like I'm not looking at Michigan like I would look at Northwestern, who had to replace a coach for the entire year, and saying, well, this is probably not good.
Right.
But
no,
go ahead.
You're right. No, I mean. And I think this would help Nebraska a little bit, but I'm actually with Children of the Corn on this one. Unless, like, Harbaugh, this thing just goes, like, total haywire here the next couple weeks and he gets suspended, and they start digging into more shit and they find out he was doing some other stuff. I actually think Michigan, is just so superior of a team in the Big Ten this year. I put them up there obviously with the Penn State and the Ohio States of the world. Nebraska would have to play out of their mind. But like I said, there's a lot of football games up until that point. So hell, who knows what can happen? We got to get by Minnesota first. So
man, yeah, I know you guys are going to be definitely circling that game. We're going to be calling that, so get your popcorn ready because we're excited, man. I mean, we're getting inside of a month now, right?
Oh God,
I mean, we're almost right there. I am super excited for college football season to kick off.
Absolutely.